The city hospital was the grandest in the state, a towering building of glass and steel where the wealthy and the poor alike came seeking salvation. And yet, on the 12th floor, in the most luxurious private ward money could buy, salvation remained elusive. Eleanor Whitmore, heiress to the vast Whitmore shipping empire, lay pale and frail against the satin sheets. Her fortune could buy specialists from across the world, and her father had spared no expense. 20 doctors had come and gone, each leaving with a furrowed brow, a muttered theory, or an inconclusive report. But her mysterious illness remained unsolved, stealing her strength with each passing day. Her father, Richard Whitmore, was a man used to power bending before him. But here, in the presence of his only child's fading health, he was helpless. His silver hair seemed whiter, his voice harsher when he barked orders, and yet his eyes betrayed sleepless nights. The hospital staff whispered about Eleanor. Some claimed it was a rare blood disorder, others suspected a neurological disease, and a few dark tongues murmured of curses. Nurses tiptoed, doctors debated, and the media spun wild rumors. But no one had answers. Far below, on the first floor, Daniel Carter pushed his mop across the gleaming marble hallway. To most, he was invisible, a janitor in a faded uniform, his hair messy from too many double shifts. But those who knew him well saw a quiet resilience in his eyes. A single father to 7-year-old Lily, Daniel had learned to notice small details, the kind of details parents relied on when raising children alone. It was late one evening when fate brought him into Eleanor's world. The VIP wing had ordered extra cleaning. Apparently, another group of international doctors was flying in, and Mr. Whitmore demanded perfection. Daniel climbed the service elevator, his cart squeaking slightly as he rolled it toward the Harris's suite. Through the half-open door, he glimpsed Eleanor. She wasn't the glamorous socialite the tabloids described. Instead, she looked almost childlike, her cheeks hollowed, her frame delicate. She struggled to sit up, wincing with effort, while a team of nurses adjusted her IV lines. Daniel didn't mean to stare, but something tugged at him. Not sympathy, though he felt that too, but recognition. He had seen that kind of grimace before. When Lily was 5, she had suffered a series of unexplained fevers. The doctors then had missed a crucial clue. Until Daniel, desperate, had noticed the pattern of her reactions to light. That detail had led to the correct treatment. Tonight, in Eleanor's slight wince, he caught the echo of that same detail. He lowered his gaze quickly, focusing on his mop, but his mind raced. Later, when the room was empty, he passed by again to collect waste bags. Eleanor's breathing was uneven. Her hand trembled as she tried to hold a glass of water. And then, it happened again. Her eyes flickered at the faint buzzing of a fluorescent bulb overhead, and she flinched almost imperceptibly. Most would dismiss it, but Daniel noticed. The next morning, Eleanor's condition worsened. The 20th doctor, a renowned neurologist from Switzerland, emerged from the suite shaking his head. "It's inconclusive," he said gravely. "We need more tests." Richard Whitmore slammed his fist against the wall. "More tests? My daughter doesn't need more theories, she needs answers." His voice thundered down the corridor, and yet no one contradicted him. Daniel, kneeling to clean a spill just a few feet away, froze. His heart pounded. The urge to speak gnawed at him. What right did a janitor have to offer his observations to billionaires and world-class doctors? He could lose his job. Worse, he could be laughed out of the building. But then he remembered Lily's weak little voice asking him years ago, "Daddy, will you fix me?" He had. Because he had dared to notice what others missed. That night, while the corridors were quieter, Daniel took a risk. He lingered outside Eleanor's door, waiting until the nurse stepped away for supplies. Then he knocked softly. To his shock, it was Eleanor herself who answered faintly. "Yes." Her voice was fragile but curious. Daniel stepped inside cautiously, hat in hand. "I'm sorry, miss. I don't mean to intrude. I've been working near your room, and I couldn't help noticing something." Her tired eyes studied him. Most patients of her wealth would dismiss a janitor, but she was too exhausted for pretense. "Noticing what?" He swallowed. "The light. You wince when it flickers. And the buzzing sound. It bothers you, doesn't it?" Eleanor blinked, startled. "How do you know that?" "Because I've seen it before," Daniel said softly. "My daughter had similar reactions when she was sick. It wasn't what the doctors first thought. It was something else. Something they nearly missed." Her lips parted, a spark of hope mingling with suspicion. What are you saying?" Before he could answer, the nurse returned. Her eyes widened at the sight of a janitor near the patient. "What are you doing in here?" "Out! Now!" Daniel stepped back quickly. "I'm sorry. Forgive me." He left the room, heart racing, the nurse muttering about boundaries. But as the door closed, Eleanor's gaze lingered on him, thoughtful. The following day, chaos erupted when Eleanor suffered a sudden collapse. Doctors swarmed, machines beeped, and Mr. Whitmore's shouts echoed through the wing. Daniel, cleaning nearby, clenched his fists. He wanted to run in, to scream his observation, but fear of losing everything held him back. And yet, fate was not done with him. That night, as Daniel finished his shift, a soft voice stopped him in the hall. Eleanor, pale but determined, leaned against the doorframe of her room, supported by a nurse. "Mr. Carter," she said quietly, "come inside. I want to hear what you know." Daniel hesitated, glancing at the nurse, who looked uneasy but obeyed Eleanor's command. Inside, Eleanor sat weakly on her bed, her eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. "You said you noticed something no doctor did. Tell me, please." Daniel's chest tightened. He was just a janitor. But in her gaze, he saw desperation. He thought of Lily. He thought of promises kept. Taking a deep breath, he said, "It's a sensitivity, to light, to sound. It could point to something deeper. A metabolic issue. Or neurological, yes, but not the way they're testing. They're looking at the big picture, but sometimes it's the small details that matter." Her breath caught. For the first time in weeks, she felt someone was speaking with her, not about her. "You're saying you see a clue," she whispered. "Yes," Daniel said. "A tiny one. But it might be the key." Silence stretched between them. Then, faintly, she smiled. "Then, Mr. Carter, I believe you." Outside the door, the nurse stiffened. And down the hall, Richard Whitmore turned the corner just in time to overhear. His face darkened, not with disbelief, but with the wrath of a man who would not tolerate anyone meddling in his daughter's fate. Least of all a janitor. Richard Whitmore's shoes struck the polished floor like gunfire as he stormed into the room. His towering frame filled the doorway, his eyes blazing at the sight of a janitor standing beside his daughter. "What is the meaning of this?" he thundered. Daniel froze, mop handle still in his grip. Eleanor flinched at her father's tone but raised a weak hand. "Father, please, he was only what? Polluting your mind with nonsense." Richard's glare shifted to Daniel. "You, out of here before I have security drag you out and blacklist you from every hospital in the state." Daniel's chest tightened, but before he could retreat, Eleanor's frail voice cut through the tension. "No, Father." He noticed something the doctors didn't. Richard blinked, stunned by her defiance. "Eleanor, you're exhausted. You don't know what you're saying. This man is a janitor, not a doctor." Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to keep his job, to keep food on the table for Lily. But Eleanor's eyes, pleading, determined, anchored him in place. With effort, she pushed herself upright against her pillows. 20 doctors, Father, 20. And none of them can tell me why I feel like I'm slipping away. Maybe the man who actually noticed something deserves to be heard." The room fell silent. The nurse looked as though she might faint. Richard's jaw tightened. "Very well," he said finally, his voice dangerously calm. "Speak then. Impress me." Daniel's pulse hammered. He had no medical degree, no white coat, no authority. Only his observations, his instincts as a father. "I've seen her reactions to light and sound," he said quietly but firmly. "The flicker of bulbs, the hum of machines. They're not just annoying her, they're triggering something deeper. My daughter had similar symptoms when she was misdiagnosed. It turned out to be metabolic, something the doctors overlooked because they didn't look closely enough." Richard's eyes narrowed. "So you think my daughter has the same condition as your child?" "Preposterous. I don't know if it's the same," Daniel admitted. "But I know it's something, and it could be the key they're missing." Eleanor's breath hitched. She turned to her father, desperation shining in her eyes. "He might be right. Please. What harm is there in letting him speak to the doctors? In letting them consider what he's seen?" Richard looked at her, at the pale echo of the vibrant daughter he once carried on his shoulders at the family estate. His lips trembled, but pride quickly masked the flicker of vulnerability. "You think your life should rest on the word of a janitor?" he demanded. "No," Eleanor whispered. "But it should rest on the truth, and truth doesn't care where it comes from." For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Richard exhaled sharply, like a general conceding a battle. "Fine, you have 10 minutes. After that, if you waste our time, you're finished." Daniel nodded, heart pounding. The next morning, a meeting was called. The specialists gathered in a sleek conference room, their suits and lab coats radiating authority. Richard sat at the head of the table, cold and commanding. Eleanor, too weak to attend, had demanded her words be read aloud. "Hear him out." Daniel stood at the far end, clutching a folder of his own scribbled notes. He had stayed up all night researching, poring over Lily's old files connecting dots, though he knew he was out of his depth. Still, he believed. One doctor, a stern woman with glasses, arched a brow. "You want us to believe you saw something 20 trained professionals missed?" Daniel met her gaze steadily. Yes, because I'm not looking at numbers or charts, I'm looking at her. Murmurs rippled around the table. Richard crossed his arms, impatient. Daniel pressed on. The sensitivity to light and sound, the tremors, the sudden weakness. It suggests an underlying issue in energy metabolism. Mitochondrial function, maybe. Something they won't see unless they're looking for it. You've been running tests on the wrong systems. The room erupted in skepticism. Terms were thrown at him, unproven, anecdotal, not medically reliable. One doctor even chuckled. With all due respect, sir, you mop floors, leave medicine to us. Daniel swallowed hard. With respect, doctor, you've all had months and millions of dollars. And yet she's getting worse. Doesn't that tell you something? The words hit the room like a slap. Silence followed. Then, slowly, one younger doctor leaned forward. Mitochondrial dysfunction, it's rare, but possible. And it could explain the cascade of symptoms. Another frowned thoughtfully. We dismissed it early because of her blood